welcome to another video where we explore the Confucian Analects. In this video, I want to take a brief look at a few passages on the subject of money, and in particular how wealth is not nearly as important as virtue, and much like someone like Socrates or the Stoics in the West might say, you should be satisfied with virtue and don't stake your happiness on money. But there's no doubt a Confucian flavor to these ideas over here in the Analects. Speaking of over here we are looking from Hong Kong's tallest mountain, Tai Mo Shan. We're, I don't know, maybe halfway up, and we're on the northern side, and we're looking westwards towards Hong Kong, Western New Territories, more or less. And this is the lower right-hand corner of the screen, but let's now go to our text. What we're interested in here is a few passages, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I hope I don't ramble too much on any of them. 5 passages on money and virtue, and how, well, virtue is the point of life, money is not. And we're going to look, as is my custom in this series, at the public domain James Lake translation, the not public domain, but mercifully on the internet Charles Muller interlinear translation, and the Oxford World Classics translation, and maybe make what observations I'm capable of making on vocabulary. Let's go straight to admirable indeed was the virtue of Hui. This is Confucius' favorite student, his greatest disciple, Yan Hui, who died young but was a wonderful fellow. He was Confucius' greatest follower, and here's one reason why. Yan Hui was happy in poverty. There's not a lot of explanation as to why he's happy in poverty. You have to get that from the rest of the text and from other comments on Yan Hui, but it would appear that he was content, like a Stoic, with being virtuous, or at least working on virtue. And he was content, much like a Socrates, with the pursuit of knowledge. And he didn't need to not have any poverty in his life to avoid unhappiness. So admirable indeed was the virtue of Hui. With a single bamboo dish of rice, a single gourd dish of drink, and living in his mean narrow lane, while others could not have endured the distress, he did not allow his joy to be affected by it. Admirable indeed was the virtue of Hui. So that's book 6, section 9. So in the Muller translation, that's book 6, section 11. And Muller will give us a useful comment on the background of the word translated there, admirable in leg, but Muller translates worthy. The master said Hui was indeed a worthy. With a single bamboo bowl of rice and gourd cup of water, he lived in a back alley. Others could not have endured his misery, but Hui never changed from his happy disposition. Hui was a worthy indeed. Book 6, section 9, or now here, section 11, in the Oxford World Classics. The master said, a man of quality indeed was Hui. He lived in a squalid alley with a tiny bowl full of rice to eat and a ladle full of water to drink. Other men would not endure such hardships, but Hui did not let his happiness be affected. A man of quality indeed was Hui. Now, there's no hint that there's anything wrong with preferring to not be in poverty, but clearly poverty is not a necessary condition for happiness if we consider the example of this. Sorry, wealth is not a necessary condition for happiness if we consider the example of this person. The word translated worthy or admirable or quality in these different translations is this. Xian, according to Muller, means good, kind, intelligent, courageous, etc. It's also a technical term for a person of a high level of moral and intellectual achievement. It indicates someone who's almost perfect, although not yet a divine being or sage. All right, so what's the point here? Yan Hui, Confucius' greatest follower, best disciple, favorite student, was happy in poverty. Why? Because he didn't stake his happiness on money. He was interested in higher things. And this is an example, no doubt, for all of us. Now, let's go to book 7, section 15. Confucius, speaking now of himself, the master said, with coarse rice to eat, with water to drink, yet with my bended arm for a pillow, I have still joy in the midst of these things. Riches and honors acquired by unrighteousness are to me as a floating cloud. Money, particularly ill-gotten money, is fleeting, and you're not supposed to stake your happiness on it. You can stake your happiness on something else and be happy even in poverty. Here he's like Hui, with an emphasis on not getting money by inappropriate means. And again, no great explanation here as to what it is he's happy with instead. it's virtue, though. Well, you find that in other passages. Maybe we'll get to one in a moment. But let's check other translations here. Where were we? 7.15. And sometimes the numbers don't quite line up in the different editions. The master said, I can live with coarse rice to eat, water for drink, and my arm is a pillow, and still be happy. Again, happiness and poverty, totally viable proposition. Wealth and honors that one possesses in the midst of injustice are like floating clouds. So here in this translation, we're reading injustice or unrighteousness, as Legg translates the key term, as not the source of my own money, but just the context in which I get it. When you're living in a corrupt society, wealth is not stable. Cast but a glance at riches, and it will fly, and it will fly away, for it will surely sprout wings, flying like an eagle toward heaven. Something like that is in the book of Proverbs in the Bible, and this is especially true in the midst of injustice. 7.16, Oxford World Classics. The master said, even in the midst of eating coarse rice and drinking water and using a bent arm for a pillow, happiness is surely to be found. Happiness is still a viable proposition in poverty. If you have just a little rice, a little water, and your own arm for a pillow, you can still be happy. Riches and honors acquired by unrighteous means. Here's reading it like Legg. The unrighteousness or the injustice is the inappropriate means of getting wealth, not just a context in which wealth is fleeting. Riches and honors acquired by unrighteous means are to me like the floating clouds. Now, I'm emphasizing what aspect of the floating clouds? They float away and they're gone. There may be something else I'm missing, but that's my initial reading of the passage. Take it until you learn better, if you ever do. Let's go to Book 4, Section 2. The master said, those who are without virtue cannot abide long, either in a condition of poverty and hardship or in a condition of enjoyment. The virtuous rest in virtue, the wise desire virtue. That's Legg, Oxford World Classics. The master said, it is impossible for those who are not humane to dwell for a long time in adversity, and it is also impossible for them to dwell for long in pleasurable circumstances. Those who are humane rest content with humaneness, and those who are wise derive advantage from humaneness. The master said, if you lack Ren, you can't handle long periods of difficulty or long periods of comfort. Humane men are comfortable in Ren. The wise take advantage of Ren. Now, let's clear up first things first. The key word here is Ren, or Yan, sometimes translated benevolence, humaneness, humanity, kindness, perfect virtue. Legg here will translate it as virtue. Oxford World Classics translates it as humane or humaneness, depending on whether it's being used as an adjective or a noun. Muller often leaves it untranslated, as here, although he does translate it as human in this clause. All right, so the first sentence, the master said, if you lack Ren, humaneness, virtue, you can't handle long periods of difficulty or long periods of comfort. You can't dwell for a long time in adversity, and it's impossible to dwell for long in pleasurable circumstances, or you can't abide long either in a condition of poverty and hardship or in a condition of enjoyment. So let's just paraphrase this very briefly. Without virtue, you are not the kind of person who knows how to handle or is able to handle wealth for very long or poverty for very long. Now let's go to the next clauses and translate or comment on, it's well translated by others. Let's just comment on this sentence. Humane men are comfortable in Ren. Ren men are comfortable in Ren. Yan people are comfortable in Yan. Benevolent, humane, kind, virtuous people are comfortable in humaneness, kindness, virtue. The virtuous rest in virtue. Those who are humane rest content with humaneness. So this, I think, is probably one of the clearer statements of what it is you're supposed to desire instead of money. You're supposed to desire virtue. You're supposed to be content with being virtuous with or without money. That's the Confucian idea. It corresponds very nicely, of course, to any number of ideas and traditions from elsewhere, like Stoicism, for example. Now like translates this last clause as the wise desire virtue. Here I have to be a little more careful because this is I don't know, this is harder for me to figure out. The wise desire virtue, says like, but Oxford Word Classic says those who are wise derive advantage from humaneness. Similarly, the wise take advantage of Ren, virtue, humaneness, in the Muller translation. Now, I don't know the language properly. Here's Ren, Jan, virtue, humaneness. I think this phrase just means wise person. There's no ambiguity between our three translators, at least, on that. Those who are wise, wise person, wise man. This word is translated advantage in with a verbal sense, derive advantage, take advantage in these two translators. In its noun function, it can mean advantage or profit, P-R-O-F-I-T. Mencius. This word turns up on page 1 of the Mencius. This is a later Confucian text about Mencius Mengzi, one of Confucius, well, not one of his direct followers, but a Confucian philosopher from a little bit later. In that context, in the first page of the book about Mencius, it sure looks like this word has a material sense, a physical, worldly sense. It's talking about, well, money, or maybe worldly advantage, like getting a raise or getting a promotion. It has that sort of sense. It's about worldly status and goods and possessions. So the simple statement, the wise take advantage of Ren, Yan, virtue, or those who are wise derive advantage from humaneness, Yan, virtue. As far as I know, it might be possible to read this as saying that there is a material advantage to virtue. Virtuous people tend not to remain in poverty very long, which again might have something to do with some remarks in the Bible. I've never seen the righteous man forsaken or his children begging bread, says the psalmist, although Augustine in his sermons on the Psalms talks about how we do have examples of righteous people in poverty, and so you have to interpret this passage spiritually or Christologically or something. But it may just be a general statement. It's not normal for virtuous people to be in poverty. This may be a possible reading of this passage, that the virtuous can derive some material advantage from virtue. They won't remain in poverty very long. That's maybe one way of reading the passage, but maybe it's just saying advantage in a different way. The wise take advantage of Ren. Why? Because they're happy with it, and there's no need for anything else. So I don't know how to read this. You could read this one way or the other. At any rate, the straightforward statement, the wise take advantage of Ren, advantage being this term right here. That's how it's stated, and interpret it as you like. If you know better than I do, proceed, keep on knowing better. Interpret it better than I know how. Humane men are comfortable in Ren. I think this one, I'm not seeing any ambiguity here. This is what you should be comfortable in, what you can rest in, what you can rest content with, be content with virtue, not money. So this passage, this sentence in particular, the wise rest in virtue, the humane person rests content with humaneness. Humane men are comfortable in Ren. Yan men are comfortable in Yan. That's the remark to pair with all these observations on Yan Hui and Confucius and the bended arm for a pillow for what you can be happy with instead of money. All right, let's go to just, I think, 2 more passages. Same book, just scroll down just a bit. Now, you may know that sometimes people say money is evil, or money is the root of evil. Where do they get that from? I don't think that's written anywhere. At least nothing authoritative. So the Bible, I think this is in one of Paul's letters to Timothy. And I'll give you the quote that's in my head, which is probably close, if not correct, and from the English Standard Version. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. What the Bible says is the love of money is the root of evil, not that money is evil. or even that money is the root of evil. The love of money is the root of evil. So money itself, not bad. I think the correct biblical picture is that money's actually good. Now, the Stoics might say it's not good technically, but it's okay to prefer it. Confucius is, well, somewhere between the Stoics and the Bible here. Maybe he's exactly in agreement with the Bible. Money is good. Wealth is good. Better to be rich if you can. Better to, if you can do it properly. And better to be out of poverty if possible. That seems to be the idea here. But it's not the greatest good. The greater good is morality. The greater good is to be good, and a lesser good is to be out of poverty. Riches and honor are what men desire. If it cannot be obtained in the proper way, they should not be held. Note how this sounds just like all the other stuff we read in the Analects. Poverty and meanness are what men dislike. Not, oh, you're being mean. Meanness here meaning the not so common and contemporary English sense of meanness. Lowness, worldly lowness. Poverty and meanness are what men dislike. We're just basically looking at a parallel word for poverty here, but we'll see what other translations say in a moment. Poverty and meanness are what men dislike. But if poverty cannot be avoided in the proper way, don't avoid it. All right. Confucius said, riches and honor are what all men desire, but if they cannot be attained in accordance with the way, they should not be kept. Poverty and low status are what all men hate, but if they cannot be avoided while staying in accordance with the way, you should not avoid them. Oxford World Classics, riches and honors, these are what men desire, but if this is not achieved in accordance with the appropriate principles, one does not cling to them. Poverty and obscurity, these are what men hate, but if this is not achieved in accordance with the appropriate principles, one does not avoid them. I think I should just make two observations on this passage and then shut up. First observation, and at the risk of repeating myself, it's totally fine to prefer money, to prefer to be wealthy, to prefer to be out of poverty. By all means, if you can, do it, but never sacrifice virtue for money. Now, next observation, just on the vocabulary. Legg says, in the proper way. In the proper way. Oxford World Classics. Golly, I got class coming up in 12 minutes. Oxford World Classics says, in accordance with the appropriate principles. Well, what's the original text say? Let's go to our vocabulary that I try to keep handy when I do these videos. Dao, do, way or road. So this is a key term in this passage here, Dao. And here it is. And let's see, how many times is it used? Twice in the passage. I scroll through it and slowly get to it. There we go. So I like the Muller translation here for emphasizing this key term just a little more than Legg did. In accordance with the way, in accordance with the way, the Tao. I like that. I like that phrasing because this is a word that means a little bit more than just in the appropriate way. It does mean in the appropriate way, but I think it's appropriate to treat it as meaning a little more than that. It's the way that we're talking about here. It's the Tao. Okay, so wealth is fine. It's fine to not want to be in poverty. It's better to avoid being in poverty if you can, but don't sacrifice virtue for money. All right. Finally, book 7, section 12. Oh, yes, that one. The master said, if the search for riches is sure to be successful, then I should become a groom with whip in hand to get them. No, wait, if the search for riches is sure to be successful, though I should become a groom with whip in hand to get them, I will do so as the search may not be successful. I will follow after that which I love. 7:12. Now, the Oxford World Classics will give us a nice explanatory note in the back of the book, briefly stating that this bit about a groom with whip in hand just means, well, it means a lowly job. It means a humble attendant, bottom left page there. Okay, so 7.12 Oxford World Classics. Oh, I'm in 12. 7.12. The master said, if even riches might properly be sought, I would surely make them my aim, even if it meant being a fellow carrying a whip. But if they may not be properly sought, I shall pursue those things which I admire. The master said, If the attainment of wealth was guaranteed in its seeking, even if I were to become a groom with the whip in hand, I would do so. But since its attainment cannot be guaranteed, I will go with that which I love. What does he love? Well, I think it's virtue. Now, if you want to interpret this a little more broadly and say it's justice and knowledge and wisdom and virtue, sure, fine. If you have to name one thing, I think virtue is the thing to name. The important thing here is there are things more important than money. If you could be sure of getting money, I would do it. I would clean toilets. I would clean toilets to get rich if I could be sure it would work. But since there's no way of being sure of being rich, Confucius says, I'm going to do the one thing that matters more, that I have a much higher chance of succeeding at. I'm going to pursue that which I love more than money. Nothing wrong with pursuing money, but something else is much more important, and that something is virtue. And with that, I'll shut up and I'll head to class. And thanks for watching.